Welcome to Slideshow, the podcast where we bring ideas to life one slide at a time. My name's Dave Hayward, and I'm the founder of Europa Creative Partners. And I'm here with Allie Lichtenberg, who is the founder of Ad Lucem.
Thanks for having me, Dave, on my first ever podcast with a good friend. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you, especially since this podcast is live and direct from New Zealand. And of course, where are you from?
I am currently in Jersey City, New Jersey. And I was born and raised in Westchester County, New York. So about an hour north of here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Take us through who you are and what you do in a little bit more depth. We've got for the audio listeners, we've got a slide here which has got Allie's LinkedIn profile, which is really beautiful actually on the left hand side, and then on the right hand side is it's an ad platform of unfathomable complicatedness that mere mortals like me can barely understand, but experts like Allie, it's like living in, it's like oxygen. So yeah, do you want to just talk us through what you've got on the slide and what you do?
Yes. So the short of it is I am a programmatic media buyer, and that is going to be completely unhelpful for anybody to understand what it is I do. The kind of easy example is I buy media space for advertisers looking to advertise to the common person out there. And if you've ever seen an ad on CTV or a banner ad on a website, or a social media ad, or you've heard a podcast ad, chances are someone like me put that ad there. We used data and platforms like the screenshot on the right. This is actually right out of the Meta Ads Manager. So this is what brands use to get ads to you on Facebook and Instagram.
What about take us through how you get the data in the first part, because we've talked about this before, and this is really endlessly fascinating to me and probably will be news to a lot of people as to how it is that we know what your email address is and things like that.
Yeah, so a big part of a successful advertising campaign is being able to tell the systems that we're working in who we want to target the ads to. And the way we do that is through a library of audience data segments. We can also do it contextually, but a lot of times it's done through actually identifying audience characteristics, meaning I can identify if somebody has shopped at Whole Foods in the last month, or bought a pair of sneakers, or likes to read romance novels, or is into buying art supplies. So in our day-to-day, right, we're going about our lives, buying things, reading things, filling out surveys, and the odds are someone's collecting that data. So how are they collecting it? Sometimes it's because you signed up for a loyalty program, and so they'll give you 50 cents off a can of beans if you will give them your email and date of birth and where you live.
What about upcoming changes? There's been rumors about Google changing third-party data rules coming up. Is that something that you've thought about, and is it a real concern, do you think?
It's something I think about all the time. And it's something that maybe the average consumer didn't think about as much a few years ago, but there's definitely been more education just in the general ecosystem in terms of better understanding what it is we're actually giving up when we put our data out there. I think the average person has become more educated about that, and there are continents and countries and states that have been more proactive about data laws. So obviously in the EU with GDPR is something that's in the news a lot. The EU has been incredibly kind of leading the way in terms of data privacy regulations. In the US, California is a major player in terms of putting some of those protections in place. And it's only going to keep growing. So it will become harder and harder to do this kind of targeting, But people like me and the people I work with, we're already starting to think about,
Figure
okay, well,
out.
then what
Yeah.
other ways can we target someone?
I guess the other thing, the real big takeaway from this and from almost everything is first party data is what you is really really important, right? You know, your mailing lists and your subscription base, they are that data is like gold, because you can have a platform change and you know, you hear people, social media influencers all the time complaining that they used to have 20,000 followers and now they've got 5 or whatever, and that's
Right.
because they're on someone else's platform, right?
Right. They're on someone else's platform. Also, I mean, there's cases where, there are fake profiles on social, and how sometimes those profiles can follow you to try to game the system in favor of what they're doing. And so these platforms have also gotten smarter about weeding out the fake profiles. And so that's a piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's been a bit of talk on LinkedIn lately about engagement pods, which I didn't know what they were until
Oh,
a few
yes.
weeks ago. I don't know if you've heard of this, but basically they're like WhatsApp groups where people just go like and follow each other's posts all the time, you know,
Yes, I
which
have
is
heard about this.
which is I find it a bit of a weird concept, because actually I like and follow all my friends. You're probably top of the list. I mean, I'm always
Same.
commenting on your stuff.
I'm always
So
looking for your stuff.
so does that mean that we're an engagement pod? It's like this kind of weird, you know, space that LinkedIn's got itself into, you know.
I
But
mean, we might be. We
yeah,
might be in
well,
an engagement hub, but yes.
very
So
charming one though, you know.
it's a fun pod. I mean, if I'm
Yeah,
gonna be in any pod, that's the pod I want to be in. But LinkedIn engagement, and really for any platform, right? The algo, short for algorithm, is
yeah,
very important, both in the organic sense, so when we're interacting day to day on a platform, but then in the paid side, so when a brand is actually paying to put their advertising out there, the algo also takes a part into it. But to your point, even you and I as individuals interacting on a platform, the algorithm is also making decisions about, should I even see your post, and if I comment on it, is that a genuine comment, or am I trying to help you game the system?
yeah,
So yeah, there's a lot that goes into thinking about that.
yeah. Okay. Well, we're just gonna have to pause recording there because my dog. Oh no, it's changed his mind. Oh no, we'll keep going. Okay, so I think that was really cute. It just came right in shot. Okay, so take us through how you got here, and I think that might be the next slide. In fact,
Okay, yeah, we can go there. Yeah, so how did I get here? It's a lot of art and science and unexpected decisions along the way. So I never planned on going into programmatic media buying. In fact, when I was in college, I graduated in 2009. I mean, back then, the field that I work in now was still very much in its infancy in some ways.
yeah,
So this was not a subject that even could be studied in school. Now people are studying it in school, and I get interns who they know what programmatic is when they're 20 years old. I did not. It barely existed.
right,
So back when I was in school, I had made the decision to be a biology major, a chemistry minor. And originally, I was also a math minor, but that did not go well. Calculus kicked my butt, and I also had a math professor who suggested to me that perhaps some girls shouldn't do math. So that was like a pretty discouraging sign that maybe I shouldn't continue with my math minor. And in fact, I dropped it, and I picked up an art minor instead, because I just felt like I was already doing a lot of math anyway, and I wanted
yeah.
to just have some fun.
A lot of
Oh, yeah.
our listeners are international. They
Okay.
may have heard of New York, but they may not have heard of New Jersey.
I am from a suburb of New York City, so Westchester County. And specifically, I went to school in a town called Yorktown Heights. It's very small, um, very small town. I live in New Jersey now. It's not much different. They're about an hour or so apart. So think of me as just generally from the Northeast, New York City suburbs. So that explains some of the accent, a little bit of
Yeah.
my personality. It explains a lot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Well, it's hard for me because obviously I don't have an accent, so
right, right.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. And so that's where you came up through. And so when you say you graduate, do you mean you graduated from high school or you graduated from college? Because that's something I always get a bit confused about. Also, because the system's different down here.
Oh,
And
right. Sure. So I graduated from high school in 2005 in Yorktown Heights. I
oh,
then
cool.
went to college right after that, not too far away. So about 20 minutes south of where I went to high school is where I went to college.
Yeah.
So somewhere in between New York City and Yorktown, there's a college called Manhattanville. It is now called Manhattanville University. When I went to it, it wasn't as fancy. It was Manhattanville College. And that is where
Yeah.
I did all of this
All
work that
this.
you're seeing on the screen.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so let's go left to right. So, for those
Yeah.
of you who are listening on audio, what we're looking at is a series of images that depict Allie's extraordinary career through school. So, there's something about, I don't really know how you describe this. This is all
I don't know either.
biology speak. Yeah. We got some biology stuff on the left hand side. In the middle is, well, what's this? The Dr. Ruth Polar. I can't quite read it. The
Yep.
Memorial Award. So, you're
Yep.
in there.
I'm in there. So, yeah, if you look real close, every year they put someone's name on this board that hangs in the hallway of the biology department. And I received this honor in 2009 when I was graduating. Back then, my last name was Matola.
Yeah.
So, yep, I'm Italian by heritage. So that was my original last name. And in 2009, it was awarded to me because I was the best biology major of that school year.
Wow. Nice work.
Thank you.
And this is your artwork from the same time, right? So
This
yeah.
is some of my artwork for the same time.
Nice. And so
It's
we've got
fine.
we've got a series of pictures of lamps and a pot plant and kind of how would you describe it? Sort of vaguely Van Gogh-ish,
Oh,
you
well,
know?
thank you.
Yeah, and got some sort of crackling energy in the middle one. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
you're definitely being way too kind about my artwork. But I was definitely having fun, and this is just one kind of small representation of one, some of the artwork images that I still have of that time. And two, it's a funny story because the assignment was to paint a still life at three different times of the day and kind of study the color and the lighting.
Ah,
Um, my artwork usually took a back seat to all of my science work, so I was working on this the night before it was due. And so I took this, I painted one picture at like 11 o'clock at
mm,
night. The next one was like at midnight with the light on. And then I was waiting for the sun to rise the next morning because I had an 8 a.m. class to hand this in, and the sun
wow.
was not rising. So finally it rose, and I painted it very quickly. And then I brought it to art class with the paint still wet.
Wow. Well, William de Kooning apparently he was interviewed and they asked him when he knew his paintings were finished, and he said it was when my manager is waiting at the
Yeah.
bottom of so they're but I think you're taking the deadline to absolute extremes here, so that's good. Speaking to someone who's like ruled by deadlines, I appreciate the hustle. So
Yes.
shall we move to slide? Oh wow! Oh,
Yeah.
this is cool.
Yes. So how a little bit more about how I got here and what do I do now. So, um, funny, so I did biology and art and chemistry, and that at first glance might have nothing to do with programmatic media buying. If we go way back to my origin story, my original passion when I was 4 years old was building Lego doll houses, and I wanted to be an architect. And so, really, I think maybe as you can tell, ever since I was a very young child, all I ever thought about was what was going to be my next career move. So it changed throughout the years, but I always thought about that. I started building Lego doll houses. I started getting super interested in architecture as much as like a 6-year-old can. It evolved into drawing on graph paper floor plans, learning about a famous architect that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then in high school, I started taking drafting classes to learn how to draft. And I was super excited to pursue this field. But before I was even told that girls shouldn't do math, I had also been told that girls shouldn't do architecture because that is also a man's field. And so at 16, I kind of like took everything everyone told me very seriously. And so I figured, oh, I can't do that.
This is just bizarre. And this, I mean, I sort of associate this with sort of like a 1960s biop or something, or like lessons in chemistry or something. But this is
Right.
the
Yeah.
early aughts. So
Yes. It was the 1990s. Even like, when I was
oh, of
a very
course,
young kid,
yeah.
1990s and then early 2000s. But yes, we were still telling girls that they shouldn't do math and architecture and engineering.
It just seems to me that those fields are always they're very creative fields, right?
Mhm.
And so the thing about creativity that I've noticed is the hardest things that I found to do at school were the group things, but also the best work that you did was in the group stuff, right?
Mhm.
And one thing I've noticed, I know there's a big like anti-DEI thing going on or whatever at the moment for whatever reason, but even if you're just a cold capitalist, right? Teams that have diversity are way more innovative
Mhm.
and dynamic. All of the best teams I've been in have been like that. So I just don't get it. I don't understand what
I don't get
the
it either.
yeah
It was a very strange thing to encounter, and at the same time being also fed messages that like, girls can do anything, like
yeah
we've evolved, and so it was definitely an interesting dichotomy. And I just remember one teacher, I think I was in elementary school, like, one teacher even told me, don't worry about learning math, like you can marry a man who knows how to do math. Like it was just bizarre.
Okay.
So in
Uh,
any case, I think why I frame this slide the way that I do is because I became very jaded and angry and disenchanted with a lot of my interests that I had after being told. I'm disenchanted with a lot of my interests as a child because I had gotten so much sort of negative feedback
uh,
on those interests. What I as an adult have learned how to do is re-embrace those interests, and even if I'm not going to be an architect or a literal builder in my day-to-day job, I've learned to embrace some of those principles and also have fun like I used to do when I was a kid. So
yeah.
for me now, Lego is about relaxing. I have a lot of anxiety. I'm a very stressed person. I have a lot of deadlines. So it's a lot about relaxing. And for me, one of the most relaxing things I can do is follow instructions. So
Nice.
I love building to pre-made, like pre-designed sets.
It's interesting. There's a sort of dichotomy about you, which I find really interesting, which is that on the one hand, you really like linear process,
Mhm.
and on the other hand, you're wildly creative. And so this, you've got the two married quite nicely. And yeah, I wrote. We've talked about this before, but I wrote a article recently about my painting teacher who
Mhm.
and he talked about how great art is a tension between structure and what he called magic, chaos essentially.
Yep.
And that if you have too much structure, it's boring. And if you have too much creativity, it just is real messy and doesn't make any sense. And we're looking here, maybe we should describe the slide
Yeah.
so we can kind of, see how that's embodied in your work.
Yeah. I would love to. So I love just beautiful aesthetic items. So I definitely seek that out when I look for Lego models to build. So really retro is a big theme for me. So a retro typewriter, two different retro typewriters, a record player, a Polaroid camera, Another huge theme for me is florals because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I'm a girly girl in a lot of ways, and I
Oh
love
my
any
God, that's
floral.
Lego.
Yep, they're
Oh
all
my God, that's so cool.
yes. So bouquets of flowers, and now Lego is even incorporating flowers into, like you see with the typewriter and the record player, incorporating flowers into just like scenes of objects.
Wow.
And so in the upper right corner is actually pictures of boxes that were just delivered today. These are going to be my next builds, and there's definitely a floral theme there. So they can have all my money if they keep making flowers. And then another big theme for me, which of course goes back to the architecture, is Lego has a line of called modular buildings. And so these are buildings you can collect throughout the years, and then they actually line up to form a little village.
Hey, one thing I've just noticed, which is very cool. I don't know if you did this on purpose, but is that the Statue of Liberty? Just to the right of the. That's the real Statue of Liberty, I'm
That is the
imagining. So
real
from your
statue.
window.
Yes, great eye. And yes, anyone who's watching this on a screen and can zoom in, definitely take a peek at the Statue of Liberty in the background. So that was a gorgeous sunny day that I took this picture. That is a view out of my dining room.
Wow. Oh, that's cool. So that must be. Is that Manhattan off to the left there? Or sort of, yeah.
So those immediate buildings are actually still Jersey City buildings. They're
Uh huh.
very close to me, and they're some of the tallest buildings in Jersey City. And then beyond that would be Manhattan, and I have a view also of the World Trade and Lower Manhattan.
Oh, fantastic. So why don't we skip to the? Why don't we jump to the next slide?
All right.
And then I'm going to do a little bit of instruction here. We'll cut this bit out. But what I think we should do is go back to the beginning and do the start at the beginning because my
Okay.
emails made a noise and also Coda
Okay.
was like barking.
Yes. Sure.
So yeah. So yeah, take us through. Okay, so Frank Lloyd Wright, famous architect and man about town.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about what this is all about.
All right. So, as I alluded to before, at a very young age, I discovered Frank Lloyd Wright. I believe the way it happened was my mom saw me building my doll houses for my uh they were McDonald Happy Meal Barbies that you'd get with your meal. So I would
Right,
build Lego doll houses for those Barbies specifically. And my mom saw me building these houses, and she taught me if I put some of the boards that I was building on up on stilts, it would be like Frank Lloyd Wright. And I think if I'm remembering, it was she was alluding to the falling water, right? So the different levels of um, kind of jutting out from a waterfall. It's his most famous probably work. I actually have not been to it yet. I'm kind of
right.
saving it because it's like the
Yeah,
penultimate for me.
yeah.
But if you look it up, almost everybody has seen this building. So I learned about him from a young age, and ever since then, I always wanted to design my doll houses like Frank Lloyd Wright. But then again, became a teenager. I became very jaded and kind of angry about, being told I can't do something that I wanted to do. So I put him away for a long time.
Right.
Um, I rediscovered him in 2017.
Mm,
It was going to be the 100th anniversary of his birthday.
mm,
And actually, him and I are also almost birthday twins. He was born on
nice.
June 8th. I was born on June 9th. So it really
Holy
kills
moly.
me that we're
Oh,
one day.
well, I'm June 4. So,
Oh, so
yeah.
fellow
So,
Gemini.
so we're all Geminis. Yeah. Okay, cool. And I'm really interested because I know almost nothing about him. And what I was interested in is that you were talking about how he was sort of like an early, he's an early influencer. He's someone
Yes.
who really understood personal brand really well. What is it about him? How did he go about that?
Yes. So that's another thing that I really love about him is some say he is the original personal brander. If you look at the picture on our slide on the far left, you can see a picture of Frank Lloyd Wright. So he was known to dress in kind of very eccentric, specific outfits. Sometimes he was known to have a cape. He often walked with a walking stick, hats that he usually wore. So he had a very specific way of dressing that everybody knew was Frank Lloyd Wright's way of dressing. This then extended also into how he kind of signed off on his work. So on a few of the slides, you'll see there's a red square. And actually within that red square, he usually put that on some of his buildings as a tile, or then he would include it on his blueprints and other drawings of his work. And that was sort of his logo, right? So he had a signature color, this bright red. He had his initial signed into it. He was known by FLW. And the other piece of this was he always made sure to own his story and to get his point of view out there. So he was a really early master of kind of talking to the media and having a persona.
I suppose actually for him, it was also about getting work. It's really kind of, it's like why people, every founder at the moment is having some sort of glow up, because they're trying to get work for their product or whatever.
Exactly.
This reminds me actually of a very, my own sort of brush with, we talk sometimes, there used to be a comic I used to buy called Viz Comics. It's based out of Newcastle, and they had this column called Lane to Fame, which is when you have a really kind of tenuous connection to famous people.
Right.
And my lane to fame is that I was really into William de Kooning, the painter, and he, this was I'm quite a bit older than you, so this was in the time before the internet widely being available. So all I knew about him was pretty much from books in the library, and I didn't realize that actually some of his works were seen a bit problematic by some of the first wave feminists, and we had Judy Chicago, the famous I don't know how you describe her. I guess she's an installation artist, and she, goes around with her husband Donald, who's a photographer, and they sort of collaborate. And she was famous for the dinner party, which was this really big work which involved hundreds of women across the country. I've probably got that wrong, but anyway, that's what I remember about her. And she came to speak at Elam, the art school I was at, and spent a good chunk of her speech absolutely giving William de Kooning a kicking. And it's like for all of us, we were sort of like, what? And it's like, it seems weird now where anyone gets remotely famous, you can find criticism about them immediately, right? But back then it was a bit of a surprise, and then afterwards my dean was introducing me to Judy Chicago, and she said, this is Dave, and he's actually just done a really good block of work, but he was struggling a bit, and he went to went to an art history lecture and got really inspired by a painter. Who was it again? And I was like, I can't even remember if I said William de Kooning or what the story was, but I'm really bad at hiding, I've got no poker face. So basically, I think I went bright red, basically. And it's kind of like, yeah. So that was my brush with fame. What is it about Frank Lloyd Wright's work that you really like? What is it, do you think? I mean, obviously you've been into him for a long time, but have you ever given some thought about what it is that really works for you?
Yes. So a few things. One is his very intentional way that he connects his buildings to nature, and that when he designs buildings, his philosophy was they should be of the land and not on the land. And so I think you get really magnificent structures then. So if you look at the top right, that is an image that I took at Taliesin West in Phoenix, Arizona, where he built his winter estate. And it's built into the beautiful desert hills of Arizona. And there's many examples like that. So that's something that really appeals to me. And then again, just the consistency of design, even when he's working on what seem like very different projects. So the top left is the SC Johnson headquarters, so an office building versus a family home, versus he's designed gas stations, houses of worship. but they are distinctly right, even in their differences. And so the consistency of, again, his brand into the work that he's producing always fascinated me.
Let's bring it back to what you do now. How does all of this, do you find that your kind of creativity outside of work influences what you do at work in any way?
Absolutely. So, I mean, so first of all, one, in terms of being that personal brander, when I built my own company, which like I said, I never really wanted to do, but I sort of found myself at a turning point and decided to. I had to create a brand for myself. And so I really did consciously and subconsciously look to him. So you'll notice when you go to my LinkedIn page, I'm all about the navy blue. That is my color. I came up with a name for myself that is actually the name of my company is very connected to my last name. Both of them have meaning about to the light and being on the light, which I think is really important in our industry of advertising for many reasons. Um, and it's also connected to my name. So my company, Ad Lucem, has the same initials as my name,
Oh,
AL.
very cool.
So I
Very
definitely
cool.
took a lot of cues from Frank Lloyd Wright in building my personal
I
brand.
named Europa because Europa, the moon, is one of the brightest objects in the solar system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's called. And my newsletter is called Bright Objects. And
Yep.
it's
Big
all
fan.
because, thank
Newsletter.
you, thank you. And I think that so much of when you talk about stuff outside work influencing you, I get very stressed about work. I'm a real ruminating warrior basically, and one of the things that I find really helps kind of put things in perspective is to think or look at astronomical objects,
Mm-hmm.
because it's probably not talked enough about enough, but like the gold in your brain, uh, is actually from a star that exploded and died millions of years ago and
Mm-hmm.
was like an unfathomable distance away from us because it's not come from our sun. And so, even the mere fact that we exist is kind of a miracle, and let alone having a
Absolutely.
podcast across time zones.
Yes. Having a friend in New Zealand, this is a first for me. And it just makes you realize how big and small the world is all at once.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
All right.
to that point, my logo is a sun.
Yeah.
Um, I'm also right there with you in terms of getting inspiration from astronomy. And then how does that fold into how do I do my work on a day to day? There's a lot of thinking about structure and function. And so am I building campaigns that are going to provide the outcome that I want? Am I getting creative on how I'm building my campaigns? Sometimes, you know, I think as you saw in that beginning slide, the platforms themselves are very rigid. And so sometimes you get locked into that mindset and it stops you from doing the creative work that you need to in order to design these campaigns. And being inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright's work helps that.
Yeah, so in a way, what you're talking about is kind of creativity within structure,
Mhm.
and yeah, that you used to talk in agency when I was agency side. There, there's that talk about how there's this amazing freedom in a perfect brief, tight brief,
Mhm.
and that's because when you got real tight parameters, you have to kind of innovate within that, and it's in some ways makes you more creative than if you didn't have those restrictions.
Totally. I as a trader, a programmatic media buyer, the more details a advertiser or a brand can give me about what they're looking to build, the better I can build it. Yeah.
So speaking of perfect customers, what does your perfect customer look like? What are the sort of characteristics that make up a good customer for you?
Yes. So um, there's a few different things that I do and services that I offer, but sticking with purely media buying, some of my favorite clients to work with and where I am now really well set up to work with are smaller brands. local brands, think like direct to consumer or e-commerce brands. Maybe they don't have a full agency. They're not ready for that. But they want to move beyond, running their own social media, or they want to have a buyer who is well versed in all different forms of media. Those to me are the most interesting clients. I think they're really super advanced, even compared to some of our, the biggest Fortune 500 brands out there. So that's the ideal client for me.
That's it for this episode of Slideshow. Big thank you to Allie for coming along and such a fantastic podcast. If you want any more information about Allie or any of the guests on Slideshow, you can go onto our website, which is www.europa.nz. If you could leave a like or review on a platform of your choice for our podcast, I'd really appreciate it. See you next time.